So apparently this is part 4. Hard to build. So we're back again. This is the Hello Dave build again, and we are on part 4. So we've done a lot up till now, but now the bike's going to take a little bit of shape now, because we're going to be installing the wheels and we're going to be installing the braking system. The majority of the things that we're building with today are second hand or have been kicking about in my toolbox. So I have a set of Sram code brakes down here, code R's. They're all 4 pots for front and back, which is going to help because the rear of the Hello Dave is limited to 160mm rotor. So we're going to need all the braking power we can put on the back as possible. You'll also notice a bizarre combination of wheels going on. This is the rear wheel, boost spacing. I've got 11 speed cassette NX SRAM system on there already, 160 rotor and a 3-inch Rocket Ron on the rear. I've got a skinny tyre for the front end, but we're running essentially 2.3 at the front and a 3-inch on the rear. So it's a bit of an experiment, let's see how it goes. So we're going to start assembling the back wheel on, and this is so we can get our alignment for brake calipers when we install them. So I'm just pulling it up. It will stop once it's reached the top of the crescents, and we're just going to push in the through axle. You will need a 6mm Allen key or 6mm bit if you like on a torque wrench. I'm just nipping these up to what I know is roughly about 10 Newton meters. Shouldn't go any more than that, and when you're always installing and taking them out, make sure that you push it as far in as it can go, so as deep in as it can go, in order to make sure that you don't round out any of the fittings. So that's that tightened on now, and as you can see, a very small rotor to the rear. So we are a 160 on the rear, and it's because the limitations are access for the screw holes at the back here. So let me just grab a caliper and then I'll show you how to align your rotor with the pads. So I've got my calipers to hand and ready to offer them up into the bolt holes here, and we're going to need 2 bolts. So what I'm going to do is, the wheel's in place, I'm just going to slot the caliper on so that the pads, the gap in the pads is going to line up, and that drops in nicely there. 20mm long on the thread, and I'm just going to turn it on by hand there. And now the one at the back is the trickiest one to get to, so I'm just going to drop that into place by connecting the Allen key onto the end, and then that allows me to feed it through the gap and at least twist it on and get it going to start with. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn it on until I feel resistance, because what I want is the caliper to be able to shift a little bit. It's going to be nipped up so that it doesn't move easily, but if I put a little bit sideways pressure, I can shift it back and forward, so that both surfaces, so this one back here and this one here, can shift back and forward on their mounts. Now it's important to do this because this is where we get rid of any creaks and any misalignment, which would give you screeching sounds and all sorts of rubbing sounds as the tyre spins. I have in my hand the brake lever for applying, so it's okay to pull it now that there's something in between, and I'm just going to spin the wheel, pull the brake, and I'm going to hold the brake on. So I've got pressure on it there, so I'm going to hold it in place. So I'll spin it around, make sure it goes there, give it a little wiggle with the caliper, make sure it's not binding up anywhere, and then I'm going to take both bolts and nip them up about a 1/4 turn. So I know that this rotor is square, straight, there's no resistance. You can see it's spinning okay, and as soon as I hit the brake, it stops dead. Now we've got to route the hose that comes from the caliper. So just to give you an idea, this is the back wheel caliper, there's a chainstay going to the bottom bracket. So I'm just going to spin this around, and we're going to have a little zoom in. Now we'll see that the cable comes out, and the bracket, the first bracket for it, is on the inside. So we need to make sure that our cable is going to go that direction. So if I turn it in a little bit, you can see it's coming out from the caliper body here and making its way down here. So cable tie mount is going to go there. The next mount is here. The second mount is just behind the bottom bracket here. So you've got your option of either looping it over the top of the chainstay here and then into there, which is my preferred method because it's going to keep it away from the tyre. Or you could have it routed underneath and going directly down to there. So we're going to start with some cable ties into these brackets. There's a few of them here. Just the same as the dropper post, we're going to just put them through here just loosely to start with, so it gives us a bit of adjustment. So it's still loose, but it keeps us in the general area so we can tighten up and adjust the hosing as we need. And again, only just a little tight. The cabling is already running for the dropper post on the left side of the frame, so the hosing for the rear caliper runs down the center connection. So these center brackets are for it, and we're going to be leaving the right side for the drivetrain. So this is for the derailleur at the rear. And then once you've got everything tightened up, just cut the ends of the cable ties. Jump into the front end now, and we need to install the wheel again. So nothing rocket science about this really. Our mounts are on this side, so when you install the wheel, make sure that the disc is obviously going to be on that side, or this will need to come back out and be reinstalled. 15mm through axle, and we'll just insert in the back, push on through, and we're going to tighten up to whatever the normal level would be, which is 10 Newton meters I believe in this one. And that's to make sure that the wheel is properly installed for when you're lining up your caliper, because if you don't install it properly, if you had it loose, you'd line your caliper up, and then the next time you go to put the wheel on properly, the caliper might be slightly in the wrong position, so you'll end up with it rubbing. So wheel's installed, so we're now going to have a look at what we're putting on here. So this is very specific to the pikes that I'm running. I'm running at the front end is 180mm rotor. Now, you need to bear in mind that your fork will be rated for a minimum rotor size and a maximum. So the minimum rotor size on a pike, or this size anyway, or this model, is 160mm. So it means that the caliper, when you install it, if you're running 180, so 20mm large in diameter, your caliper is going to be further out. So you can see there's a bit of a gap there. So what we require is an adapter spacer that goes in between. Now this is a post-to-post adapter. It's 20mm spacing, so this takes us out to 180mm is what we're after. Most adapters will have the markings on it to say this is how far it's going to take it out. Just obviously need to get the right adapter for your forks and for your rotor. In order to install the adapter correctly, we're going to need longer bolts as well. So standard bolts have got about 20mm of thread, which is enough to grab the lug off the caliper and mount it into wherever the post is. The lugs are generally about 10mm or a centimetre thick. So I've got slightly longer ones because they need to be able to go all the way through this adapter as well as bite onto the threads which are mounted into the forks. Just hand tight with these bolts at the moment just to get them in alignment, and we're making sure that the caliper is engaging with the rotor so it's in the right position, that we're not got the rotor in between the pads and the caliper. And we're just going to turn these in until it takes up the play, just like we did at the back end. So got our brake, applying pressure, and with the pressure applied I can then take up the plate, and this means that the caliper should be in the middle just like it was in the back. So just want to show you this angle. We've got the caliper down here on the fork, and it's to show you where the routing of the cable is going to go, or the hose in this case because it's hydraulic. The cabling or the hosing is going to come on the inside, and that's to protect it from the trail. So if you ran the hose on the outside, there's a chance that if you ran against something you could end up splitting the hose. So you might not know about it at the time, bit of a safety hassle when you go to grab a load of brake. So it runs on the inside, and when it comes to rock shocks and for Fox, they have a mount up here and a clip that we can use, and this is to hold the hose away from obviously the moving parts of the tyre so that it doesn't get caught. So it just gets opened up and so inserted in there. You will need a 2.5mm hex drive or an Allen key, something that's going to fit nicely for the 2.5mm so that it fits into this hex bolt on the top. We can now move up to the handlebars for the last step. So this is Sram levers. They do have this bracketing system, so it allows you to have a clean install so you can combine things like shifters and all that sort of thing. I'm not worried about it, so it's just a standard bracket. And on top of this is a bolt for a T25 Torx head. So obviously we're not ready to ride this bike yet, so I'm just going to be installing it, tightening it on to roughly where I think it's going to go. We're going to be fine adjusting that obviously when we get on the bike and get everything set up. But essentially that's it. Just tighten up. You'll be able to come back, loosen that off, adjust the angle, adjust it up and down the bars to get the right position for your grip. But in a nutshell, that's it, done, installed. So the last touch is these fabric grips I've got to try out. Never tried them before. So we have the end caps, which will obviously stop you getting injured if you come off and they go into your chest or whatever. And then it's just on the back end, a 3mm Allen key, and they just get nipped up so that they grab on. You don't want to bend or crumple your handlebars, obviously doing that. And there we go, ready to go. Maggie, out of there, come on, out.